by and getting out of Syria. Is that a good idea?
I think it's a mistake. I've said that publicly. The Kurds have been with us when we fought ISIS and we eliminated ISIS in Syria. They have stood by us. They're our friends. They're our allies. We ought to be sticking with them. I think the abrupt pullout of Syria that President Trump announced, I don't think that's the right approach to take. I worry about the slaughter of the Kurds, and I worry about our relationships with allies when we've said we're going to be with you and they expected us to be with them, and that's clearly not happening. And so from a national security standpoint, I also look, I think it's a mistake, but secondarily, if you look at when we pulled out of Iraq, you look at the void that was created, that created ISIS. Arguably, you could have that same effect here in Syria, and so I have real concerns about it. I've expressed that to the White House. I don't think it's the right approach to take.
Do you think they're going to reverse? I think there was some indication maybe the president is having second thoughts.
Well, I hope he will. I mean, there's a lot of both Republicans and Democrats that are voicing opposition to this move by the White House, so I hope they will reconsider.
Okay. Today, the White House, I guess, had European Union Ambassador Gordon Sondland was told not to testify in front of Congress. He claimed he wanted to testify. Adam Schiff says that he views this as part of an obstruction from the White House. Do you agree with that? Do you think it was the right move to not let this ambassador testify who was involved in these conversations about Ukraine?
Well, first of all, I think I have real concerns about this impeachment inquiry and where we're headed, the partisan nature of it. Listen, I was somebody that supported Bob Mueller. I said Bob Mueller ought to do his report. We ought to give him time to do that. But I have real concerns about the partisan nature we're headed. To your specific question, Bernie, I haven't looked at the legal reason for why they don't want him to testify before Congress. I think they have the right to do that. I mean, many of these issues are going to wind up in court. So there's going to be a judge that's going to make a determination on whether the White House has the right to not send this person there. They feel like this is a partisan witch hunt. This is a pursuit of impeachment. It's almost impeach first and find the evidence secondarily. So I have real concerns about that. We'll see what a judge ends up deciding on that.
The president on the lawn of the White House said, China, we want you to look into the Bidens. Biden happens to be somebody that is running against or to replace President Trump. Do you think it's appropriate to ask for China and Ukraine, as the near transcript of the Ukrainian call said, to look into is it appropriate for the president to ask foreign governments to look into his political opponent and his son?
Well, backing up, I think I have real concerns about why Hunter Biden was getting $50,000 a month because his dad was vice president. That's the only reason I can see. Most people in my district don't make $50,000 in a year. And this guy's getting $50,000 a month from a country that doesn't have a lot of money. So I have concerns about that and the direction we're headed. I think we get into very dangerous territory when we're looking at phone calls between world leaders and where they're headed. I've read the transcript. I've read the whistleblower report. I don't see anything in there that qualifies for impeachment material. Remember, with impeachment, we want to nullify an election. We want to take away the will of the people in this. And I have real concerns about the definition of high crimes and misdemeanors. As a former federal prosecutor, you have to have facts and evidence to support the premise or the precedent for this. I don't see that at this point. I know they're going to continue going with this, but I think, again, it's a attitude of impeach first, find the evidence secondly.
I think you mean the will of the Electoral College. The will of the Electoral College, not the will of the popular vote.
Well, however you want to look at it, that's what our democracy, that's the way it's set up. And listen, we're going to have an election a year from right now. There are many people that don't like Donald Trump for a variety of reasons. That's why we have elections. We ought to have this election. People are going to have a choice. They can make a determination on whether they support Donald Trump or they don't.
Was it appropriate for the president to ask China to look into the Bidens? You know he did that because he did it on television.
Well, listen, that wouldn't be the language I would use in talking to a foreign leader with that. So that's not something that I would do. But he's the president of the United States. He has clearly he has his reasons for doing that. I don't know what all those reasons are, but he has concerns about what Hunter Biden apparently was involved with. Again, I don't know that information that caused him to ask that question.
Isn't asking a foreign government to look into your political opponent the kind of collusion the president has said he doesn't do?
Well, I think it depends on why he was asking. When I look at Hunter Biden and the fact he was getting $50,000 a month, that causes me concern on why he's getting that.
But have you done anything wrong, or are you just spreading the rumor because the president wants you to spread the rumor?
Well, I think it's more than a rumor. I mean, we have definitive evidence that Hunter Biden was getting $50,000.
Right, but you don't know if anything wrong was done to get that, do you?
I don't, but I think it's worth an inquiry to find that out.
You could ask the FBI to look into Junius Rodriguez. Maybe that's next.
Maybe that is. I haven't crossed that bridge yet. I'm not aware of there's any information that would lead people to think that way, Dave.
Anybody running against you yet?
There's lots of people that are out there that are interested in running, and I'm not sure who's passing petitions or not. So we're focused on our own race, running for re-election, and doing all the things that we think are important.
I want to back up a little bit, and I know it was 20 years ago about an impeachment. You know, the Republicans were gung-ho to impeach Clinton, and now the Republicans are, well, wait a minute. No need to impeach Trump. I mean, is it okay to ask, wait a second, this doesn't seem right, that the same party that wanted to impeach Clinton now doesn't want any of it to Trump?
Well, go back to that, Dave. Remember what happened in the Clinton impeachment. He lied under oath to a federal grand jury. So that's the first thing. I mean, that by any measure, I think, is a criminal violation. When I look at the transcript here, I don't see a quid pro quo. I don't see facts and evidence that lead to criminality on that. Now, we may find out more information as this goes along. And again, I'm somebody that wanted Bob Mueller to do his report. But the second point that I would make is there is a narrative built when the Mueller report was going on of wait for the Mueller report. You're going to find out that the president was colluded with Russia, that he did all these things. We had 19 federal prosecutors working on it, a year and a half, 500 search warrants, 2,800 subpoenas, and there was a big nothing. There was no collusion there. In this case, when you look at what Nancy Pelosi said on day one, before she had read the transcript, we're moving forward with an impeachment inquiry, before she had ever read the transcript or saw the whistleblower report. I just worry that we're getting so far ahead of ourselves without having the proper facts and evidence on this.
Given that, I think it's the New York Times has reported the president has made something like 12,000 plus comments that can be considered inaccuracies or lies, the fact that he has admitted paying off $130,000 to keep Stormy Daniels quiet right before an election. Are you a proud member of the Trump re-election team in Illinois?
Listen, I look at the results in this economy. We have the best economy we've had in 50 years, lowest unemployment rate. You look at retirement plans, you look at the prosperity, you look at jobs and everything that's created. I look at the 2 justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. I look at how we've rebuilt our military. I look at what we're doing to make this country great again. I love those results. Do I always like his tweets and how he treats people? Not necessarily, Bernie, but I like the results. And I would just say this.
So any means to an end?
I would say this, Bernie. People knew all this about Donald Trump in 2016 when we had an election, right? You couldn't have had 2 different candidates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. They knew who he was, and he was elected in this country, arguably overwhelmingly. We're going to have another election a year from now. We're going to have a choice. We live in a participatory democracy. And that's what democracy is all about. So we'll see what happens in an election. That's why we have elections, to debate these ideas. But again, I look at the results. I think the results are tangible. They're real. This country is better off economically and otherwise than we were 3 years ago.
Some people have argued that Republican members of Congress are trying to deflect from impeachment. So you being here today, is this a deflection?
Listen, I'll take any question on impeachment, and obviously I've given you my opinion on where we're headed on this. I don't think the threshold has been met for high crimes and misdemeanors, again, based on my background as a prosecutor on this issue. And again, I supported the Mueller report in doing that. So, but listen, this is, I think, a lot about people that can't get over the fact that President Trump became president. From the day he got elected, people have been trying to impeach him and go on after him. And again, I think that's more political, more partisanship than anything else. Most people, when I talk to them in my district, they want to talk about why haven't you passed anything on infrastructure? Why haven't you done anything on prescription drugs? Why haven't we passed the USMCA? We have lots of things we need to do in this country that are important, and we have challenges. That's what we ought to be focused on, and I'm willing to work in a bipartisan way. As you heard this legislation here today, bipartisan legislation that will help people across my district. That's what we ought to be focused on. I think this impeachment stuff, we're going to have an election a year from now. Let's focus on that and try to get some stuff done.
Any news on China?
Congressman, what do you say on the issue with China and the trade war? And it seems to be that the issue is between, are we going to put freedom ahead of doing business and money? We just see what the NBA did, apparently caved. They opted for money over freedom. Just give us your overall thoughts on that approach and if the president's doing the right approach on this.
A couple things on the U.S.-China thing. I'm not a fan of tariffs. Tariffs are taxes. They're taxes on consumers. So this approach of trade by tariffs, I'm not necessarily a fan. I look at how it's hurting our farmers here in Sangamon County and across the state. We don't have that soybean market in China anymore. Our farmers are hurting. There's a lot of anxiety and stress because of tariffs. I look at manufacturing. That is hurting also. Now, on the other hand, China has been ripping us off for 25 years, stealing our technology, our intellectual property, our theft on the cyber front. No one has been able to get them to change that behavior. We need to change that. And so I give the president credit for trying to get them to change their behavior. But I worry we cannot be in a trade war long term, 2-3 years from now. So I think in the immediate, if we can get them to come to the table, they're in Washington, D.C. today trying to work on a resolution. It's in the long-term interest of both of our countries to resolve this, but as long as you have an actor that continues to try to steal and rip off and engage in cyber theft of our intellectual property, I think you gotta hold them accountable for that. And that's really what this trade war is all about. I understand it's hurting right now, many sectors of our economy, but overall we have to get them to change their behavior.
All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming out.